and the willingness of the Justice Department and the FBI to publicly attribute and expose damaging cyber intrusions by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea has undermined those governments' denials and created a platform for U.S. allies to condemn destabilizing cyber activity while also undermining our adversaries' operations.
Undoubtedly, cyber attacks are becoming more frequent. They're having larger impacts, and many, unsurprisingly, are connected to the governments, as has been mentioned, of both Russia and China.
There have also been attacks, cyber attacks on OPM, on government agencies, gathering data about United States citizens and former government employees or for other purposes. I assume that some of the cyber attacks on banks, other institutions, give the cyber attackers the ability to gain information about U.S. citizens.
Yes, sir.
And I'm also assuming that at a time of war, that could be used to destabilize our country.
Certainly, that's one of the potential uses, yes.
And so we really have sort of two categories, if I'm not mistaken, and I appreciate Mr. Chabot's questions about how this money can be used to further the enterprise. When Procter & Gamble makes toothpaste, they sell it, and they're going to be able to make more toothpaste. When these folks receive money, they're going to be able to invest in maybe more intricate equipment or more people and continue their activities. But there's also this national security implication where U.S. citizens are vulnerable as a result of all of these, not all of these, but some of these attacks.
Yeah, I think that when we look at Russia specifically and their targeting, but if you're okay with it, I'll expand it to China as well. When we look at their targeting of what I'll call personally identifiable information, that is something that they're going to take back and utilize to craft a more overarching campaign. It's very hard for me to say what those are here in this moment, not because it's classified or unclassified. We just don't know how they're going to potentially use that information. You know, I could come up with a use case in my mind that says perhaps the Chinese are using it in the criminal underground to generate income off of U.S. PII, right? I mean, there's any number of use cases. So I think your terminology of destabilizing is absolutely fair, but it's very hard for me to be precise about exactly what they're going to do with that information. I just think due diligence of vendors and understanding your risk profile as an organization is extremely important. That's based on your own variabilities. Same conversation we have for doing business in China. There's going to be risk. What is your risk tolerance, and what is your due diligence to put your organization in the best position possible?
Since 2015, we've seen foreign adversaries try to manipulate our elections and national politics with false and misleading information being shared online, and sometimes we've seen domestic politicians amplify that disinformation and media hosts. Using a mix of bots and organic posts on social media, Russia, China, and Iran have spread or amplified disinformation in a coordinated attempt to influence the outcome of both local and federal elections. Can you talk to us a little bit about why disinformation campaigns are so difficult to identify and take down, and how does the FBI work with public and private partners to neutralize disinformation campaigns?
Sure. So what you're primarily talking about is what we would term foreign influence. And, you know, I'm on the record already saying this, but I'm happy to go through it again. The FBI has very specific responsibilities and authorities. By design and necessity, the FBI is just one part of the solution amongst many other U.S. government partners. Important to note that we follow the actor and the activity. The problem is when an actor masquerades as someone he or she is not and amplifies disinformation through obviously a coordinated campaign. We worked really hard over the past couple years to build relationships with private sector partners so that we can transparently and in timely fashion take appropriate action in line, allow those companies to take appropriate action in line with their corporate terms of service. And we do all that, what we consider very mindfully, legal process as appropriate. And you know, I think just underscoring all of this is ensuring we're respecting the rights of possible U.S. persons, as Americans have had very broad rights to consume create and spread information.
In February 22, the Biden administration, just recently, last month, decided to scuttle its China initiative program launched by the Justice Department during the Trump administration to protect America from national security threats posed by the PRC. I'm troubled that that's going away. What comments do you have? Isn't that something that is important to protect Americans and American interests?
What I would say about China is, from a cyber perspective, they are the top overall cyber threat that we face as a country. That poses both security and economic threats.
So in other words, when we hear from the other side, Russia, 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 it's actually China is the biggest threat, is that correct? Not diminishing that we should pay attention to Russia also, but you just said China's the biggest threat, is that right?
So we have a big four, right? China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. They're all formidable adversaries. From a cyber perspective, we would assess that China is our most formidable adversary.
Does the Biden administration scuttling the China initiative bring you any concern?
So we operate fairly autonomously, independent of what the Biden administration did or didn't say. Our investigative posture on cyber threats posed by China has not diminished in any way, and we have the largest percentages of our organization dedicated to those types of investigations.
Thank you for that answer. It was recently reviewed at the start of the Russia-Ukraine conflict that information that President Biden passed on to General Secretary Xi in China, that it was compromised. That information was sent on to Russia. Do you know if any of our foreign assets and/or infrastructure was compromised?
Sir, I don't know that answer.
Who do I go to get that answer?
What I would say is let me take that back, and we'll get that answered for you. I don't know that answer in the moment.
Yeah, deeply concerning, Mr. Chairman, that we're seeing information just simply passed on to our number one adversary, China, and the Russians are able to use it.
Now I want to go to a question of great interest to me, and that is your assessment of the quality and ability of our private sector to head off that which is happening in China. So tell me, how good a job are we doing in that private sector? Are you seeing an increase in attacks? Are you seeing the private sector doing a good or a bad job?
So, and I want to try to be consistent, and I've answered this question twice, so try to be really consistent. My interactions and our organizational interactions in cyber relative to the private sector have been very positive in the last year that I've been here. It's hard for me to speak to the time before that I was in New Orleans, but in the last year, these infrastructure providers, these major server providers, they have been very, very good partners. And if you go and do some research, you'll see they're actually writing their own blogs and disseminating their own products to the American public, largely before sometimes anyone else outing adversarial activity. So I think they've been tremendously transparent and tremendously proactive in that space in terms
Okay, that's all very good, but I haven't heard you tell me how well we're doing when it comes to keeping up with China.
Sir, my statement covers China, covers Russia, because the private sector sees a lot of the activity from all of those countries.
So you're saying we're doing just fine?
Sir, there's always room for improvement, undoubtedly. What I'm saying is the private sector is very proactively engaged and been a very good partner in that space to us.
Thank you.
On February 23rd, 2022, Department of Justice announced the end of the China initiative, despite an internal review finding no indication of racial bias. Mr. Vorndran, what is your division doing to absorb all the activities that were part of that China initiative that was, we all thought was being very successful in countering national security threats posed by China?
Sir, our workload in terms of cyber division has not changed as a result of that initiative that you referenced. As I've said already on the record here today, we do consider China our top overall cyber threat to the United States and to our allies. We have an enormous amount of our workforce dedicated to that cyber threat. That has not changed in the last 6 months, the last 12 months, the last 18 months. The problem with China is that they're very indiscriminate about who they target. It's not that it's the U.S. government. I just have a few notes here. Think tanks, academia, CDC's, journalists, medical, COVID-19, the list goes on. They're very indiscriminate. And so we would say that they are the biggest national security and economic threat. But to your question, is my workload changed? It has not. We've had a lot of people dedicated to that problem certainly over the past year.
So in relationship to the initiative, there had to be some items that I would assume would have to be picked up in some form by your division. But you're saying that did not happen?
No, sir, that didn't happen for me. And again, this gets into some of the bureau structure, counterintelligence division. They may have a different answer to that question. I'm unsure. But for me personally, under oath, my workload has not changed or been altered in any way as a result of that.